Point of order, Joe Gucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I seek your assistance in just perhaps if you were able to give me some guidance as to how much debate we've had on parts 1 and 2, how many speeches we have already had, so I can get some indication of the progress this part of the bill has made thus far in its previous debate.
This is I'm going to handle this. That speech was the third call. On second call. So there's been 2 calls because that speaker was finishing off a speech from the other day. So it is 2 calls that have been taken. So I call the Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to speak again in this debate on the Whanganui iwi Kaitoki prison and northern part of Whanganui Forest on account settlement bill. And this time, Mr. Chairman, I don't wish to traverse the history and the settlement process and the Crown Forestry Rental Trust creation and all of that background material, because I've done that before in speaking to this bill. But I want to focus very tightly on the title, because that's what we're talking about. Mr. Chairman, when I was a child growing up in New Plymouth, we learned to say Whanganui. Whanganui. So we said, because we only came from New Plymouth, we didn't know. We said Whanganui, so Whanganui Prison, Whanganui Collegiate, not too much difference. We learnt to say that name as Whanganui. But in the course of the intervening decades, clearly the re-emergence and the reassertion of te reo has made people more sensitive to how things are expressed, how Māori words are pronounced, and we've got to the point now where the people around the Whanganui area have clearly asserted, and with some causing some rancour in the area, that they wish to have the name Whanganui with the H in it, and pronounced with the way the Honourable Tariana Turia pronounces it frequently in this House, as Whanganui rather than Whanganui, which may relate to another part of the country and another expression of Māori pronunciation. But what I find interesting in this one, Mr. Chairman, is that the Māori Affairs Select Committee, in its report, was really quite decisive about why this should change. And if I can just quote from their commentary for a moment, they said, "We heard from the Southern Whanganui Cluster Working Party that they strongly feel that the spelling of Whanganui should be with an H. On 18 December 2009, the Minister of Land Information announced his decision to assign the alternative official geographic names Whanganui and Whanganui, without the H, and stated his expectation that Crown agencies would adopt the Whanganui form over time. And we also strongly feel that Whanganui should be spelt with an H." Mr. Chairman, the interesting thing, well, a couple of interesting things about that. The Minister of Land Information, in fact, in the process of announcing his decision, did that time-honoured tradition of ministers who wish things not to be noticed and announced it on the 18th of December. So just before Christmas, hoping that it would fall into the abyss and that he would not be subjected to the kind of debate and disapproval that had been characteristic of the argument in Whanganui. But the implication from the Māori Affairs Select Committee report is that the Minister felt strongly about this. The Minister felt strongly. If he had felt strongly about it, he might have released a decision earlier than the 18th of December 2009. However, the Select Committee says, we also feel strongly that Whanganui should be spelt with an H. I welcome that. I welcome it. I do not believe for a moment that that was the Minister's position, and the Māori Affairs Select Committee is simply adding their weight to it. However, we have it now as it stands with the H in it. And when we look around here, so in the South Island, where I live now, we talk about kaitahu instead of ngaitahu. We talk about auraki instead of aurangi. And so the NG is replaced with a K sound. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Well, the Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And so there are dialectical differences, but here the Māori Affairs Select Committee has been quite emphatic about recommending the amending of the spelling of Whanganui Kaitoki Prison to Whanganui Kaitoki Prison, and the northern part of Whanganui Forest to the northern part of Whanganui Forest. And I hope, for the sake of the Hansard, that the distinction in the spelling with the H and without the H is clear from my pronunciation. I hope that's of assistance to the Hansard recorders. Mr. Chairman, the other thing that is of interest is not only the spelling of the title here, but there's also something that is quite difficult. It's the business of an on-account settlement, the deed of on-account settlement, which is part of the title, Whanganui Iwi Kaitoki Prison and northern part of Whanganui Forest on-account settlement bill. And this, if we go to the definitions in order to explain the title, is referred to in the preliminary provisions in Part 1 of the bill under definitions as meaning the deed of an on-account settlement of historical claims of Whanganui Iwi in relation to the Whanganui Kaitoki Prison and part of the Whanganui Forest between the Working Party on behalf of Whanganui Iwi, the trustees of Pakaitori Trust and the Crown, dated 31 July 2009 and as amended from time to time. In other words, the title is reflecting the settlement. The title is trying to describe these parts of the Whanganui area which are now being handed over to Whanganui Iwi in settlement of breaches of the treaty that have occurred over time. And so we come to the title, which describes exactly what the bill has contained in it, but has also this interesting reference. As a student of language in a former life, I find it a really interesting issue. And I think the debate, I think when the Minister of Land Information took up his portfolio, he didn't expect there to be a matter of such agitation, a crisis, a level of agitation and argument and debate around the word and around the name as there was. Because suddenly he found himself with Michael Laws on the one hand attacking and really ramping up Pākehā agitation about te reo and about Māori Renaissance and about Māori assertion of treaty settlement obligations. And so he didn't want to be caught in the middle of all that, and so in the end released his decision a few days before Christmas so that anybody who was at all interested may well have missed it. So, Mr. Chairman, I welcome this bill. I look forward to its progress and its movement on to its third reading. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Joe, would you?
I move that the question be now put.
I call the Honourable Parakura Horam.